Welcome to Voices from Below, a podcast where we share the real stories and experiences of miners. Our aim is to foster understanding and positive change by highlighting personal experiences and insights without focusing on specific individuals or organizations. The views shared here are personal and not necessarily those of the podcast team. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Voices from Below. Today, we're talking with Jesse, an underground blaster responsible for a range of tasks, including inspecting blast sites and coordinating drilling operations. Jesse, thanks for joining us today, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so could you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about your journey so far in mining?
Yeah, for sure. So, kind of been mining since I was probably 3 or 4 years old with with Grandpa's stories. I grew up listening to a lot of stories in my family. My grandfather was a miner. My uncle was a miner. So, grew up in a mining community, and then after high school, kind of did the travel bug thing. But then it was a 7 to 8 year hunt in the mining industry. So, got a trade. Started off as a carpenter, and got my big break. Actually, got invited to come out into one of the Canada's diamond mines, and started from there. So started in diamonds for about 4.5 years in the Canadian Arctic, and then was able to switch over to surface mining. So we're in a high grade gold mine in Ontario, and then switched back to like a bit of a rehab project in British Columbia doing tunnel work, and then started contract blasting out of that area in British Columbia, and then got into gold mining. So I started high speed development with a company that does high speed development out of Australia, and was there with probably 2.5 years with those guys, and got into another high grade gold mine as well. So yeah, it's been a nice long journey, man. Been probably blasting out of the I think I'm going on 12 years now in mining, 10 years in blasting. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, that is definitely a fair amount. So you said that you're in a mining community. Was that pretty much expected for people in your community to go into mining? Like, was there, much else, or was that the main route that most people went?
There was a lot of industry in the area, logging and construction and stuff like that. I guess it wouldn't say it was expected, but it was definitely a goal for a lot of people. It provided a good life for the community, and that mine ran for over 110 years. So it was a goal of a lot of guys going through high school, listening to their fathers or grandfathers' stories, like, oh man, I want to work in that mine.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good community, built a good community. But just before I actually graduated high school, the mine did shut down. So it was kind of a dream that I always sort of, I guess, fought for and wanted to get into, because it just, I don't know, it sounded interesting. It was listening to the stories. There was nothing like it, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
like hearing underground guys mining. Sounded exciting and thrilling, and it provided a good life. And yeah, I wanted to get into it. So kind of set my sights on that, and yeah, 7 years planned for that, and got into it.
Yeah, and I'm guessing because we've had some people on the podcast in the past that have said like how much mining has changed over the years. So I'm guessing, people's parents or grandparents or something, telling them about their experiences with mining. I'm guessing it's changed quite a bit over the years from them compared to now. So like, were you disappointed, or was your perceptions pretty much straight on for what it actually was when you entered?
No, you listen to the stories, and you, I guess, set a vision in your head of what it's going to be like, but nothing can really describe it until you actually fully experience it. There's a sense of smell and taste once you get underground. There's nothing like it. You smell diesel fuel exhaust, and it's musty and muggy and wet and loud. It's the craziest environment you'll ever experience. You got a 500 horsepower fan blowing, the size of a jet engine, blowing air,
Wow.
screaming away above your head, and 14-yard scoops, 60 ton haul trucks, all maximum horsepower that you can possibly fit in there. It's loud, it's dirty, it's grimy. Yeah, it was kind of everything that I did hear about. Definitely some of the haywire stories that you grew up listening to. The rock falls and this and that, the risks those guys were taking, and it was more structured on bonus production, right? Like those guys,
Mhm.
the wages were nothing. They worked for bonus. So that's how those guys made their money. They cut every corner that they possibly could, almost, within reason, obviously. But that's how they provided for their family, right? What you mined, what you broke, is how you got paid. So it was definitely structured a lot differently, which is great, right? It's made the industry a lot safer than what it is today. Our bonus structure is based on safety, and yeah, it's still a
For sure.
production industry, but
Yeah.
safety definitely plays into effect, and then also technology, right? Technology has made things a lot safer for miners these days. There's geotechnical equipment that they've implied and implemented into the mining industry, and there's a lot of mining professionals nowadays that base their careers on, there's say for example geotechnical engineers. There wasn't a lot of that back in the day. Ground support,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
was it was highball. It was, bolt as minimum as possible, get that round on the ground, muck it, cycle the round, and keep going. So that's kind of how it was. Nowadays, you know, especially for big companies, it's safety pays, right? You can't really make a buck when you're killing people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's changed. It's good though. It's all for the good.
For sure. Yeah. So going along with that, could you just maybe describe a little bit more for, the listener exactly what you do as, a blaster and your other roles? So, for someone who's not as familiar with exactly what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll have usually our cross shift will blast, say for example night shift, they'll blast. So first thing in the morning, you and your blasting partner, you'll calibrate your gas monitor, and you guys will be typically always the first two into the mine, which is pretty exciting because you're going down a kilometer deep. I don't know what that is in miles, maybe half a mile, three-quarters of a mile in some cases. It's just you in the mine. It's just you guys. So you get down there, you start driving down, and the whole way you're checking your gas levels, checking your ventilation, making sure the ventilation is either on or reestablishing the ventilation. So, you're looking at the fans. If the fans are off, you got to fire the fans back up. You also got to know which gases are what. Are they heavier or denser than air? So when you are testing it, and make sure that you're testing the whole kind of atmosphere itself. It's kind of crazy. Like if you're, say for example, testing down by your waist, and CO is obviously lighter than air. It could make or break you actually living or dying. Like that monitor
Wow.
actually that monitor actually reading that gas. So you have to test the whole atmosphere. So you're doing a sweep, and you're going into the mine, and NO2 is a big gas that is produced by blasting. You can usually see it. It's yellow or brown. So if you start seeing that, obviously you got to wait. But understanding the ventilation system is huge as well. How the ventilation system is actually circulating, and where the mine air is actually going. So yeah, we start going in. You're looking at your readings. There's obviously a threshold limit value for what we can be in for gas, because you're in gases all day long, no matter what it is, diesel, particulates, and CO. But there is a limit in Canada that we're allowed to operate in over a 12-hour shift. So you start going in, and if it's clear, okay, perfect. Then we work to the working face itself that you just blasted. So then now you're checking the face. You're checking to see if everything went off, all the explosives actually went off themselves, because the mining cycle after that is you're going to go in and muck it out. So with the guys that don't really know the mining terms, mucking is you're going to dig it out. So the scoop operator is going to come on in there. So you got to make sure all the explosives have gone off. You look at the blast profile to see if it's actually what the design is actually supposed to be. You're looking to see if everything is good, all good. If there's any hazards, there's a lot of variables that play into it, right? Is the vent tube good? Is there services that need to be done before they can get in there? And if everything's all good, you get to make the call to actually clear and open the mine. So then after that, mine's open. You're running around then, checking on the drillers, chatting with them, seeing who's going to come up online first. Say for example, high speed developments. You're on the clock. You got priority one headings, normally your main decline, depending on what they deem priority, but you're cruising around talking to the jumbleman, who's going to finish first, how it drilled, how the rock type is. And then you're preparing your explosives from then. So then you're going up, you're going to time, basically design your round for how you're going to blast it, depending if it's an incline or a decline or if it's a corner. Yeah, depending if you're turning whichever direction. So obviously you time and design your blasts in sequence. So if you're turning right, for example, you'll try to pull or push that muck towards the right hand side. That way they can have that muck pile in the center of the drift. So it actually makes or breaks 45 minutes compared to an hour and a half for mucking, which is huge, right? If you can shave off 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on how you blast it, if your muck size is also the rock type, and for example, in the diamond mines, it was in the Canadian Shield, you have it down in the States as well. It's, one of the oldest rock types, one of the original continents, obviously in North America. There it was, what is it, 3 billion, 4 billion years old. Wow. Here in BC in some of these mines, it's pretty dynamic, right? We're in sedimentary rock with volcanic intrusions and all kinds of different strata. So you got to definitely read the rock and how you're going to blast it, because you wouldn't attack it the same every time, right? So you want to make sure that your muck size isn't too big, because it's hard, obviously, on the equipment. Yeah, you can muck it faster because there's less buckets involved, and then if you turn it into popcorn and then, instead of 30 buckets on a 14-yard scoop, it's 45, right? And that shaves off or rather creates, the difference between 45 minutes to muck it out or an hour and a half. So in high-speed development, literally every second counts. So you go down there, make sure that whoever's coming online first, you get right behind the jumbo. As soon as he's pulling out, you assess the face. You'll scale the face down. Any loose rocks, any hazards involved. Make sure your ventilation's obviously up to snuff, because a big one is gas clearing times on your end. So when you blast, you want to make sure that when you fire the fans back up, it's going to clear quick. So that way, you can get back to mining, right? The longer it takes to clear, you got dollars and cents on the line. People are waiting for you. So you check that, you check the face, scale the face down. There's usually always bits of loose. So you got to be really aware. Like, the most dangerous part in the mine itself is being at the working face. So the blasters are always exposed to being right at the face. Like, you got a jumbo drill. Sure, he's up there marking up the face, he's drilling, but he's back, 4.5, 5 meters in his cab, right? So the blasters are always right at the face, which is, you got to watch yourself. Then you're checking the ground support. You're making sure that everything's okay. Like, a lot of the times in high-speed development, you're blasting rounds that you blasted no less than 5-6 hours ago. So the ground changes within those 5 or 6 hours. So you listen to it too as well, right? Like, it's sometimes snapping and popping, and there's rocks sometimes coming out at you, but all within discretion. You make the call whether or not you're going to load it or you're going to get it rebolted or whatever the case is, right? So then you look at how it's drilled. Obviously, you've already talked to the jumboman, but you kind of look to see which pattern he's used, how he's drilled it, because it's obviously because of rock type. And then you go in, and this is where it gets really calculated, because time is money, and you don't want to be at the face or be exposed too long there, obviously, and you want to get it done as fast as you can. But it's safety. It's one of those things where you walk before you run. Like, you've heard those terms, but when you get efficient and you do it safely, you get quick. So a lot of those guys get those opportunities to become development blasters themselves. So every move is there has intent behind it. You have to make sure that everything that you're doing at that point is going to be productive. There's no wasted moves. So then you start priming. You have a high velocity booster that goes onto your detonator itself. So you put, it's like a little stick of dynamite. That's the best way you can kind of describe it. So you have to get those explosives, your bulk explosives, up to its maximum velocity as fast as it can, because otherwise you're going to leave these things called bootlegs on the face, which are kind of remaining holes that haven't gone off. So after you blast, it'll be longer scaling time, longer cycling times. So you prime your detonators, get that all ready, and how you're sequenced and how you want to blast it. And then you prime all the holes, and you start loading top down, and it becomes kind of repetitive in a sense of the loading. But for a newer guy, you're always watching how it's behaving. Like, we load with an air pressured kettle, so you got I don't know, 2,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate and fuel oil in a kettle, and it's pressurized. So after your booster goes down to the toe of the hole, which is the bottom of the hole, and then you start loading it with your bulk explosives. And then obviously, depending on the rock type, you design or kind of decide how much collar you leave. So just for simple argument's sake, say it's a 10-foot long hole. You don't load that full 10 feet. You load, say, 7, and 3 of those feet is called the collar. That's like the borehole in which that you don't have like your explosive column loaded, because otherwise it's just kind of redundant at that point, right? Depending on your rock type, sometimes you load it right to the teeth. We call it. We load it right up, and you got to send it, right? But in most cases, you leave a collar, so you're kind of watching your hose to make sure no holes ran into each other, because instead of putting 50 pounds of explosive in one hole, if 2 holes run into each other, you're accidentally putting 100 pounds in, and when you let her rip, you're definitely going to hear about it from management and the bolters and stuff like that, right? It could cause a lot of damage. So you're rocking and rolling, you're making sure that you're moving efficiently, but you're also watching how you're loading it, right? Like, are all the holes kind of in sequence? Are they fundamentally kind of the same? Like, is everything behaving the same? Also, with sedimentary rock, with it's dynamic, right? Like, are you losing product? Are you able to achieve your collar? Like, holy shit! Like, oh my god! Like, this isn't loading up as fast as it should be. I'm losing product somewhere, so it's going somewhere, and is that charge going to set off the other holes? So there's things that you're watching as you're loading. And then once that's loaded up, you have like, typically there's many kind of different types of explosives that you use, but I'll just go for argument's sake. Like, we have a shock tube. There's a little bit of explosives within this tube. It's sometimes 20-meter depths, 5 meters, however long that your holes are going to be designed for. But you clip that onto det cord. Now, det cord is probably your most dangerous explosive. Like, this stuff goes off at 40 psi will set this stuff off. You gotta work with it gingerly, and definitely be careful with it. So we kind of loop it around the round, we clip everything on, and then we're blasting, where we're initiating it with electric caps. So again, those are pretty risky in the sense of they could be influenced to detonate with radio frequency. So you don't carry them around radios, you have them separate. And then there's a tie-in sequence. So basically, you take the dead apart, you deadhead the 2 leads to make sure there's no chance that static electricity, because there's a lot of static created when you're loading with air, right? Everything's grounded out, your machine's grounded out with a chain, but at this point, when you're hooking things up, this is where you got to be on your A game. Like, a lot of guys can, even men and women, people can load, but the actual sequence to hook up is you got to be really diligent on how you're doing it, because you could have a oops, and either blow your hand off, or that'll be the end of it for you. So in tying in an electric cap, you make sure that cap is deadheaded. You tie it into the lead wire, and then you tie it into your det cord, and then that lead wire actually goes all the way up to a safe location where there's a central blast line, and that lead wire itself is actually deadheaded. So you twitch the 2 ends together. That way, if there was any stray current, static electricity, that is actually now like a closed circuit, right? It's not an open circuit. And then you go up, unhook the 2 leads together, and then you hook it up to your main blast line, and then now that's live. So at that point, luckily, I've experienced we were able to blast underground, which was there's nothing to describe it, man. It was unbelievably fun. So you're running around looking for anybody that's in that blast area. Obviously, before you start loading, you give the 45 to an hour minute warning, and then after you loaded, it's the 15. And time is money, man. You're going around telling people to get out of town and get them out of the blast area. And
oh my god,
yeah, man, do your checks and shut the fans off, which is pretty crazy at that point, because it's usually just you and your blast partner, and all day long it's loud, it's dirty, there's, like I said, there was fans screaming, but when you shut the fans off, because that shockwave, if your fans are actually on the ventilation and tubes are inflated, you'll actually blow down that vent. You'll decimate the
wow,
yeah, buddy, yeah, oh yeah. So you got to shut down the fans, make sure everything's kosher, And at that point, that mine that was once this chaotic, 1,000 horsepower equipment running around beside you, right beside you. It's just you. It's just you and your partner, and it's complete silence, man. You hear like the odd water drip. You can hear your heart pounding in your chest because you're about to push the button. And then, once you kind of get the all clear and you push that button, man, then it's kind of welcomed with complete chaos. Like, it's the most violent shockwave air pressure differential. You can feel it in through your feet, through your bones. It's rattling you.
Wow.
It just, oh yeah, it's good times. It's definitely awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you let her rip and you're kind of at the mercy of what you just did. You got 2,000 pounds of explosives going off, and you listen to it, you're right, because you can kind of time it. What, say for our last numbers, for example, they go off at 9.4 seconds. So, which is on surface, I can set off 300 holes at 1.2 seconds. On underground blasting, it's a lot slower because you got to build relief within each shot. Each sequence has to create like a relief for that blast energy to go into. Otherwise, it just freeze, right? So you listen to it going off, and depending on, you get used to it. Depending on the shock wave, like, okay, that sounded pretty good. Or if it's a little bit more violent, you're like, something something went wrong. What did we do?
Yeah, so let's say it doesn't go off. What happens then?
So yeah, what happens then is you have to basically reverse the process of tying in, right? You call up that it didn't go off, and then you just make sure that you repeat the process, but in the reverse cycle. You're dealing with an electric debt that should have went off, so you have to definitely watch yourself. Just repeat the process, but in reverse, and then go back down, suss it out, unhook it from the debt cord, figure out why it didn't go off, and then either replace the debt, or 9 times out of 10 you find out what happened. Kink in the line, there was a nick in the lead wire, hook it back up, press the button, let her rip.
Yeah, so I mean, you mentioned a lot of things that, to someone who's not directly in that seems very scary, and I'm sure it is in a lot of ways. So do you think that the level of, training and qualifications right now required for blasters is enough? Do you think the safety standards are there to keep everyone safe, or is there still a level of risk involved that is like still very, very much there?
No, I mean, the risk is always there. Like, you're handling product that's designed to explode. So it is what it is at that point. But I think the training is definitely there. The safety is there. Say, for example, in British Columbia, we have to renew our tickets every 5 years. So you're studying again every 5 years, having to renew. And then when if you were coming with me and you were first to come with, well, blaster in charge, you might handle the explosives, and then you slowly get into the loading, and then you write your provisionary test to see if you're actually competent in handling and using explosives, and then you go with the government and write your government test, and then you actually, on top of that, have an interview with a mines inspector that deems you competent. You may be good on tests, but you don't, the practical knowledge isn't quite there, so they deem whether or not that they feel confident to allow you to be a blaster. So I think the training is there. They don't just send you right in and say, here you go, but here's a stick of dynamite and let her go. No, there's a lot of processes. It takes a long time. And honestly, a lot of companies, if they, even the blaster themselves, if you're not feeling comfortable and if you just don't have it, which is fine. I mean, you could be a great miner, you don't have to be a blaster. They're going to make sure that you're not going to be put in a situation that's going to either risk your life or risk the lives of other people. So I think the safety is there 100%. It's regulated. It's monitored. The paperwork that goes with it afterwards, after you're blasting, there's a mile of paperwork I got to fill out after you blast. Right?
Really?
Oh yeah. And it's all regulated through the government as well. So updating those tests and any blasting infractions, you're gone, right? They're going to pull your ticket. So you're only as good as your last blast, essentially. So you got to be on point. And I think the training is there and the safety is definitely there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know, you've mentioned that safety is, there throughout this interview so far, but do you ever feel that, the production that is obviously very, valued for these companies sometimes comes over safety at some points, or is it always safety is over at 100% and you've never felt that?
It's a tough balance. I mean, the companies always it's always safety. I think personally people put that personal pressure on themselves where potentially they make bad choices. Um, it's never encouraged by my employers so far to ever cut corners on safety to get the production. Like, yes, we're always aware this is a production based industry, but at at number one, safety, safety, safety. If you're not doing it safe, you're going home. You're not going to be employed. End of the day, right? They don't want people down there that are going to hurt themselves and hurt other people. So I would say, if anything, people themselves, I guess maybe the pressure of that, they kind of take it on themselves and they make the choice. But as a whole, the company, I've gone around, gone to a face and said, I can't load this. It's just, it's caving in.
Mhm.
And they've gone in and rebolted it and made procedures to be able to load it and stuff like that. So I think, strongly that I've always been supported in that safety culture and that aspect. And you know what? A lot of people these days follow it. You
Mhm.
know, it gets you home safe every day. And it's also at the end of the day as well, man. You're a family down there. You know, the guys and the people or the women that break the rules, for example, they stand out. You don't want to be that person. You want to be a part of that family. So keeping your partner safe, keeping your colleagues safe, it's a huge thing, and that's what builds that community with mining. It's a family, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
No.
it's
So,
changed. It's changed a lot. It used to be production over safety, obviously,
yeah.
but
You think they've gotten better
oh,
throughout the
100%.
years?
The
Yeah.
Mines Act, they always say it, it's written in blood. The reason why these rules and regulations, it's not because they want to bubble wrap you and, you know, bring you to daycare and make sure that you're babied all day long, but there's a reason for these procedures and processes, right? It's because people have gotten either killed or seriously injured. So you pay heed to that and you pay respect to those miners that have fallen. You do things because, someone before you has done something differently and they're unfortunately not with us today, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we ask this pretty much every interview, but I was just wondering. So, what's your response to people that, let's say that mining is bad for the environment, or there needs to be reforms with what they're using? What would be your response to someone saying that?
well, it takes so many years to even start a mine these days. The process that it entails to even start a mine is just it's wild. Your license to operate revolves around sustainable mining. It's either community, like are you mining in local First Nations communities? Are you mining in environmentally sensitive areas? There's projects that are rich in ore and they've been looked at for 30, 40 years and they're still not going forward because of the environmental hazards that it may cause for those sensitive areas. So the mining industry is changed a lot in that sense as well. Like, you got chemists, biologists, um, engineers, all kinds of people that are involved in the mining process that allow you to mine sustainably. So it's highly regulated, man. There's people down there testing water all the time, looking at animal populations in 20, 50-kilometer radiuses within a mine to make sure that they're not being impacted negatively. Like we shut down a pit one time when I was underground in a diamond mine. The pit shut down above us because there was birds nesting. You know
Wow,
what I
really?
Oh yeah, man. Or there's herds of caribou in the area, and they might not be hauling to that specific dump. Um, they're constantly testing the water with phosphates or any kind of hydrocarbons. You got hydrogeologists that are monitoring kind of like underground or subsurface water streamways and how they affect water bodies that have ecosystems. So I would say nowadays, I grew up in a mining community. Unfortunately, it was back in the day a little bit cowboy, and they definitely impacted the environment, and it cost that company millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to clean it up. So you can't do it like you used to. You have
Yeah.
to. Oh yeah, it's changed. I think it's great. We do things in a sustainable way, and it also employs a lot of scientists, right? You got, like I said, biologists and chemists, and there's opportunity for people that want to be in the industry that not typically want to go flog it out underground or on surface, but they want to be a mining professional and take a science background, and you have that opportunity to be in that game because of
Mhm.
the way we're mining these days. So
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, kind of going in a different direction for a second. You've talked a lot about being a blaster, and what you've enjoyed about parts of it. But if you had to just point to one thing that is the biggest reason for why you continue to do what you do, what would it be?
I think, man, honestly, it's exciting. You get to travel. You get to a lot of these mines, especially in British Columbia. You're up in the most beautiful, pristine environment that you could possibly imagine. I just come out of night shift yesterday. We traveled across the glacier 15 kilometers, flew over the coastal mountains, and you're
Wow.
looking at ice capped mountains the whole way down. It's unbelievable. You're in the most beautiful places you could possibly see. You'll never see those places otherwise. And then the community. You build a family that is like no other. Friendships. I got friends all the way from Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Newfoundland, Ontario, straight through the country, and you keep those bonds. Like it's such a great community, such a great family. The learning experience, what you get to learn is amazing. What you get to see is unbelievable. The opportunities that are created for people out there, it's like no other. And then, where can you work half a year? And if you take vacation less than half a year and make six figures,
Yeah,
you know what it
that's
is,
true. Yeah.
time off that you get is your time off. You're not racing around because you got a couple days. And I'm not, those people love their professions, and that's fantastic. But, to have that equal time off to go fishing and hunting and hiking and be with your family. And then when it's time for work, you go and smash it out in 2 weeks, because I'm on a 2-and-2, for example. And
Yeah.
when you're home for 2 weeks, you're present, you're home, you're relaxing, you're doing some R&R. And the companies these days, they take care of you. Go get a massage. You got a healthcare card, and you're getting chiropractors done, and you're kicking back, enjoying that time. And when, if you wanted to go down on a vacation for 10 days, you don't have to take holidays. It's all within in the time that you got off, right? Like it's I highly suggest it and recommend it to anybody, man. You got to try it out. It's a great life. It's a great life. It's got that work life balance, which is hard to find these days, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so kind of going off of that a little bit, I'm sure this could that you exactly what you just said could be the answer to this question, but maybe besides that, what do you think is the most common misconception about what miners do, specifically what you do, and like any of that stuff?
I think a lot of the misconception is like we're out there trying to pound a square peg through a round hole. you know,
Yeah,
it's not like that anymore. Some of the miners, even the old timers, they're some of the smartest people that you could possibly ever meet. You know what I mean? The adversity that they're faced with. They're intelligent people. And then it's not as grimy and rugged as you think it may be. There's a lot of I work with people that have gone to university for 5, 6 years that have their masters in either geotechnical sciences or biology or chemistry. There's a huge family of people that are within that industry that you never really would know that existed until you're in it, right?
for sure.
And it's not as grimy and unsafe and haywire as it used to be. It's a really, I don't know. It's one of those places, one of those industries that's extremely safe these days. It's fun. It's cleaner than what it used to be, and yeah, I don't know. I think miners sometimes get a bad rap because you picture that pick and shovel banging away at
Yeah.
rocks. It's not like that. There's a lot of thought and process behind it, and a lot of skill. It takes a lot of skill for a lot of these miners to make it 20, 30, 40 years in the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So speaking of, someone who wants to make it 20, 40 years in the game and, is, my age or, similar starting off in the industry, if you had to give one or maybe two pieces of advice to, someone interested in becoming a blaster, what would it be?
I'd say, to get into the mining street, like it took me, like I said, 7, 8 years to get into it. Stay committed, stay focused on yourself and learning. Educate yourself, take courses, take whatever programs you can, equipment operating or any post secondary that can get you into the game. And then once you're in the game, yeah, just learn from your mentors. There's a lot of people that are willing to train you and put your time in, stick it out. It's definitely hard. It's dirty. It's wet. It's dusty. It can be filthy, but I mean, stick it out, right? Because there's a bright future with it, man. You're gonna be able to travel to sometimes the world, travel definitely within your local area, and you're gonna be able to enjoy that time off. And with kind of the cost of living these days, man, you're making enough money to be able to have a good life. So
For sure.
yeah, it's something that you want to stick out and to be safe. Like, there's obviously those procedures and things that are going to allow you to withstand 30, 40 years in this industry. So any training involved or any safety measures that are going to be put in place, respect those things, utilize those tools that they give you so you can last in the industry, right? And keep your head on a swivel. Don't take it for granted. Complacency kills. You got to always be on your toes and make sure that you're looking out for yourself and looking out for your colleagues, right? So that's what'll keep you in the game.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for sharing all this insight. It was really, really great to hear all of this, and I really appreciate you for coming on, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate your time, buddy. Anytime. Call us again and stay safe out there.
For sure. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to Voices from Below. If you or anyone you know wants to be featured on Voices from Below, you can reach us at voicesfrombelowpodcast@gmail.com. That is voicesfrombelowpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to catch you in the next episode.